Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the second episode of the Momentous Sports podcast. I am your host, Kyle Israel. And this episode today will be a continuation of episode one for us, and a conversation that I was having and had with our CEO of Momentous Sports, Marley Hughes. In that episode, we took a look back at Marley's background, my background, both personally and professionally, how we got from the work that we did in the past to the family office space and ultimately launching Momentous Sports. And we just started to get more into our thesis, why we're excited about this space, how excited we are to have some incredible partners that we do. And today, this episode will be a continuation of that conversation, diving deeper into our thesis, the way we see and look at sports as an asset class, and why we are so excited about it. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's episode with Momentous CEO, Marley Hughes. We've seen, so many, to your point, globally, this push for, stadium anchored mixed use real estate. And, as I go back to the impact piece, to a point you made, like when you think about sports, and let's think of a sports organization from the very top, from the chairman all the way down to the individual, cleaning out the stadium after a match, making sure that the parking lot's closed up, although we're going to see a lot less parking lots around these stadiums going into the future. But whoever's out there ensuring the rideshare traffic is going smoothly, like you have a chance to impact each and every human along that ecosystem chain. And not only is it just an incredible opportunity, it's an incredible responsibility at the end of the day. And so I feel so confident that we are showing up thinking through that lens of this is an opportunity and responsibility to have significant impact at scale in multiple communities across the globe. And if somebody asks me, like, what gets you up out of the bed every morning? I see the world through two lenses. Number one, the fiduciary responsibility to our partners and our future partners, and ensuring that we're, executing. But at the same time, recognizing that within that execution, the better you execute on this side, the more impact you provide for yourself, or opportunity for impact on this side. And so that's an interesting marriage of the impact and investment. But maybe talk to me a little bit about the marriage of the team, the stadium, and the real estate, although three would be a weird marriage, but we'll just bunch up those last two.
Not in
So the
today's
team,
environment. Three is acceptable.
we like to call this OpCo PropCo. So we can get, there's a whole bunch of things to talk about, but at the core, why don't we lay out there for the audience kind of this
Yeah.
OpCo PropCo strategy?
So as we started, and a great question, Kyle. As we started leading into sports again, for me, I'm goofy, I'm weird, I'm a nerd. I don't like to do things normally. And
You love
so
Pop Tarts. You love Pop Tarts.
I love Pop-Tarts. That might be more vanilla than anything that I do, um, but I don't like to do things vanilla, right? Like I want to be different in a good way, hopefully. And so, can we do sports just like everyone else? Sure. But, we started to see people like Mark Cuban come out of the woodwork and say, look, this is more of a real estate game, sports and real estate. And some of these things going on, some of these big developments, and we knew that we could add a lot of value with our own expertise and our partners' expertise. But as we started really investigating in this and saying, hey, we're going to put hard dollars into this thing, but how do we do it in a way where 1 + 1 = 3? We can go into the team, we can go into the real estate. What if we do both? Like what happens when you do both right? And so take the Atlanta Braves and the Battery up in Atlanta as a proxy, or there's a variety of other examples throughout the country. If you can get behind a great organization with great operations and ownership that is doing great things on the field and in the community, and you can pair that with an exceptional real estate experience, both in the stadium and around the stadium, whether it's, grabbing a coffee before the game or some drinks after the game, or going to enjoy, the arcade after the game, or something to even where maybe, my wife loves sports, but she only loves it for a certain period of time. If I can send her outside of the stadium to a place that her and her girlfriends love, that's awesome. Like we're still together, we're still able to be a family in different ways. And so we started saying, if we can do both, back a great team, back a great real estate project, is there a premium in that? Or are you just saying 1 + 1 = 2? Or is it 1 + 1 = 3? And so absolutely, we were, I wouldn't say amazed, but we were fortunate to find out that when we do this right, You have an exceptional premium effect on the team and the enterprise value of the team. You have an exceptional premium and maturation effect on the real estate. And 1 + 1 = 3. And that's outside of all the community impact that we talked about before. So when we talk about OpCo, PropCo, think of the teams as the operating companies, the engine, and as the PropCos as the vessel, kind of the skeleton of the car. And if you can put those two things together, it makes a pretty incredible experience. That's what we're really excited about. And so, there's going to be opportunities that, we just back a great team or just back some great real estate. But really for us, it is that blended model of OpCo, PropCo that allows us to diversify our money, to diversify the cash flow and when it's coming in. Traditionally these teams are longer term investments. It's not something that you just get into and get out of in a year. But the real estate side allows you to build a stadium and then build the multifamily around it and the retail. And you could hold on to that, you could sell that. And so there's a variety of different things, but you see the 1 + 1 = 3. And we don't see a lot of people doing that. And so as we really uncovered what we wanted to do and how we could be different in the space, that is where we saw the white green pastures to really be different and to do it in a way that was very thoughtful, and where we have a lot of conviction.
I thought that's very well laid out. And if I could double click there for a second, you know, really what was eye opening to me, and maybe this is just common knowledge or this is well known, but I don't think people think about it all the time, especially unless you're operating a team. But taking my hospitality background and thinking of the restaurant as the asset, I want to be open as many days of the year, maybe 360 if I can get away with it and have a few core days off. But it's not a great term. It is what it is, but how do you make the asset sweat? And it was really when we started to see, the stadium looked at and structured as a business in and of itself. And so beyond the 17 home games that you may have in a soccer stadium, and if you have a men's and women's team, you got 34 home games. So how do you fill the stadium the rest of the year? Right, whether that's concerts, whether that's events, whether that's bar mitzvahs, weddings, conferences, it could be a number of things. That was for me. I had never really thought through that lens 3 years ago of like, okay, how do we think about the stadium as an asset? And really pairing those three areas together allows you to your point, have significant impact. Later in this episode, we'll get into a little bit more around one of the proxies, the battery in Atlanta, that has had some great news lately, really framing out the value of what they've built there. And I'm looking forward to getting into that. But again, Sporting Jacks was really the opportunity that opened our eyes to get under the hood to really dive into, okay, this is a multifaceted approach. And then we said, okay, how do we do that thematically? Right? How do we do that more than just a one-off investment here or there, but something that we can lean into our pedigree and DNA around, which is investment management at the end of the day, and build something that others would want to be a part of too. So can you give us a little bit of a framing, and I'll add my color here as well, of where and how we're thinking about bringing this to market? And what I mean is, what type of markets are we looking at? Are these big four markets with NFL, Major League Baseball teams, NBA, NHL? Are these secondary markets across the country? Give me some context on how we're thinking about it.
Yeah. Again, we have the blessing and the fortune to be nimble and flexible, but at the end of the day, we want to have conviction in a couple lanes. And so as we've been very thoughtful and spent time on where do we want to play, how do we want to play, how do we want to structure, what type of teams do we want to back, what type of sort of markets, to your point, do we want to be in, we found a really fascinating opportunity with what I would call premier secondary markets throughout the US and also in Europe. I know, you'll get into why you're in Berlin of all places, and even Central America. And so think of places like Jacksonville. For a lot of people that aren't in Florida, they probably don't have a whole lot of perspective of Jacksonville, but it is one of the largest cities in the country. It is growing tremendously. It has the NFL team, the Jaguars, but it doesn't have a whole lot outside of that in terms of sports. It is growing tremendously. The demographic is very strong and vibrant. You have a number of thousands and thousands of houses being built, people moving in all the time, and you don't have a whole lot of places to go one, to watch sport, but two, to really go and mix sports and community and retail and placemaking. And so to answer your question, we found an incredible opportunity in secondary premier markets throughout the US, places like Charleston, South Carolina, one of my favorite cities in the country. My wife and I love going there. It's a special place in our heart. I've never even I couldn't name a team before we started investigating this that was in Charleston. And like, why would that be? Such a great place. And again, a ton of people moving there. So it's not just transient. Places like Tampa Bay, which are close to my heart, would be considered to a lot of people as kind of an upward mobile premier city, but still a secondary market. Places like Omaha that have just an enormous amount of business affluence and connectivity, great demographics. And so I'm really excited to be working on projects across the span of different markets. I talked about New Mexico earlier. Nobody, most people, if you ask 10 random people off the street how many people have been in New Mexico, not that many. But at the end of the day, it was a very good market for us, treated us very well in terms of our investment there, has an incredible fanfare and demographic. And there's cities and places like that around the country where you can make a huge impact monetarily in terms of your investment and the return on that investment within the community and are ripe for additional development on the sports side and the placemaking side. And so we're not going into places like, Paducah, nothing against Paducah. We're going into very mature secondary markets that have that yearning to be the next level. And we believe we can take them there through sport and through proper real estate development.
And it's a great framing. Let me give you just some details here on the battery while we're on this topic, with the real estate in particular. I'm just going to give you a quick summary of what came out in ESPN and Forbes earlier this week. So obviously the battery is a proxy that we use all the time. We hear used all the time, and for good reason. They are generating over $600 million annually in an adjacent development around Truist Park, which is incredible. They generate somewhere, I think, between 230 million to 240 million in baseball revenue. So like that just stands out to you right away. The value that they've created around that stadium and baseball team is now nearly 3 times as valuable as the team itself, which speaks to why we're really focused on this space. Um, Battery tenants include Coca-Cola, R&D, Omni Hotels, a bunch of high-end retail, and a bunch of digital startups. So in that ecosystem where people are living, working, and playing, if you're looking for, some signals that people are noticing, it's when Coca-Cola R&D comes into your ecosystem. Truist sponsors your stadium like they have. It's been incredible. And the thing that sticks out to me the most is when you think about going back to the 365-day a year ecosystem, 75% of the people that come through the battery each and every year are there not for baseball. So if they have 9 million or so guests, only 3 million are there to watch baseball. And I think that stat more than anything just speaks to the value of what they've created and what we look to create here across the country and globally.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'll speak for you. I know you're probably a little bit embarrassed, but I know you love Lululemon and those type booty shorts that you wear sometime. I mean, at Truist Park, you can go right downstairs and get your Lululemon. Like that is what other place in the world can you go watch a ball game and go downstairs and get your Lululemon booty shorts? So, I mean, it's evolving in real time. Um, and that woven fabric and that tapestry of different type of experiences, different people, different businesses is just wonderful. And so you're starting to see this melting pot of different things happening. You're seeing accelerators on the business side around sports stadiums. Like that was never a thing. And so it's evolving real time, and we've got some incredible vision there. So yeah, I'm really excited. And the battery is a great example. As you mentioned earlier, we're partners with Four Stones and with Andrew Cathy and Blake Goodman and that crew. They're up there in Atlanta. There's a lot of connectivity to the Braves. And it is absolutely a prototype, but not the only one and not the only way to do it. They've done a lot of things right. And I think it's a great prototype and baseline. And we've got some ideas as well.
For the audience and those that don't know, Andy Cathy is the CEO of Chick-fil-A and the grandson of the founder of Chick-fil-A. So obviously an incredible partner to have generally, and an incredible partner to have, especially in the Southeast, with what they do at Four Stones. So we've talked a lot about Momentous's strategy, our thesis in the world of sports. I think we can continue to elaborate, and let's do that now on like what Momentous Sports actually is. What is it intended to be? Is it a fund? Is it SPVs, special purpose vehicles for those of you um, that aren't familiar with the acronym? How should our audience or anybody think of a Momentous and what we're looking to do?
Yeah, again, we want to be different, hopefully in a really good way. So for Momentous, we will be having maybe around when this launches or shortly thereafter, Momentous Fund I, which will be focused on that intersection of incredible sports teams and operators and the intersection with dynamic catalytical real estate development and that 1+1 = 3 theology in some of the best markets throughout the US and Europe and Central America. Outside of that, there's going to be opportunities. Sports is such a fascinating business. And again, I'm a nerd.
Yeah.
I come from sports. You lived in sports your entire life. Like the connective tissue across sports, not only what it does for humanity, but all of the different things happening. We have a great friend who leads a venture tech, sports tech fund with Alex Bente, of the Adidas family. And talking about sports tech, sports health tech, Nestor, your background, what's going on in the gambling space, what's going on in the viewership and the media space, what's going on in terms of hardware, software for these athletes or for the participants and the viewers and the spectators, what's going on in youth sports. Sports, when you take a step back and look at all of the different things that are happening there, I posted on LinkedIn a while ago, at the All-Star game in Atlanta, the pitcher, had a microphone in and was basically mic'd up and talking real time to the announcers. And it was just fun. The Mannings with the Monday night or Sunday
Yep.
night, video cast. Like things are evolving in sports to where it's a lot more fun to play. It's a lot more fun to watch. There's different ways to engage. Cosm out in LA, which I know you're a fan of, coming to Cleveland and some other things in Dallas. Sports as an ecosystem is so fascinating and there's so many derivatives of it. And so to answer your question, we are very focused on the intersection of sports and real estate, but there's also an incredible amount of opportunity outside of that. And so we will continue to be nimble for ourselves, our capital, and for our partners' capital to come across the very best opportunities and have an opportunity to invest in those things through an SPV. As you mentioned, it's a special purpose vehicle. So that's the opportunity to say, hey, I really like that one thing out there that's maybe a little bit different than the fund ethos. But we think it's got incredible opportunities, a great team behind it. Let's go invest in that. And so Momentous will be focused on sports real estate, and the very best opportunities that are catalyzing the future of sports.
And I think that's extremely well said. I'm not sure that I could add anything to that. But at the same time, I think what I'll reiterate is when you think about collegiate sports and where college sports is going today, and actually how universities are starting to think about the infrastructure, the land that they have, how they can monetize that. With Momentous, my intention, our intention is to make sure there are multiple vintages of funds over time executing a similar strategy, but perhaps with a little bit of a different focus within the sports ecosystem. And Marley, I've been amazed truly that at the amount of deal flow, at the amount of opportunity that's out there when you think about emerging sports, emerging leagues. I've seen one firsthand here in Berlin. I'm here because of love and my family. I'll keep dripping on that a little bit. But I was a coach a handful of years ago when I had a little bit more free time for the Berlin Thunder, which is a team, a part of the European League of Football, which has 18 teams across 9 countries, American football. And it is something that you can start to see now American investors slowly moving to. And it's just an illustration of whether you're a sports fan and all you think about are the big four sports in the US, there is so much happening globally and in the US that maybe aren't those core key sports categories that we wake up and think about every day. And so it's been it's been eye-opening to me to be exposed to all that's happening. And I think, that was one of the elements that, I was thinking through as we were discussing which direction do we go here. It's okay, how do we build something an anchor in sports and real estate in that intersection, but put ourselves in a position to take advantage of or participate in other businesses that are in sports that we can bring into the ether and ecosystems that we're building globally, and then penetrate deeper into those ecosystems in a meaningful way. And when you start to think through that lens, it's already exciting, but it gets even more exciting knowing what's ahead.
Yeah, and I think we're in a really unique position to where obviously you're in Berlin, right? And you're in Europe. And I think a lot of people recognize the difference of, I wouldn't say fanfare, but just the allegiance and the legacy of professional soccer between Europe and the US. And I think, from an underwriting standpoint, I am so excited about where soccer goes in the US. I think it's in the first inning, to use a baseball term. But obviously Europeans, most live and die by their soccer teams. You mentioned football. I know we've talked about it. I believe the NFL is coming to Berlin this year, and some other things like the fanaticism that the Europeans have for American football, which is kind of funny because I've got a story that with Alex Penty that I mentioned earlier that he's not as pro on that, but um, the culmination of sport globally. And then you look at places like India with cricket and others, like there's so many things that we are in a bubble here in the US. And the US is the shining beacon and continues to be for the world, hopefully in a lot of ways. But sports around the world is evolving. There's different sports that we don't have familiarity with here in the US that are thriving in other parts of the world and starting to rip and
Cricket, rugby.
and so, we're a global team, and we have global reach and global perspective. And so, even though there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here in the US, we're really excited about the opportunities to expand upon that across the globe. And so, um,
Well, let's talk about one of those. Let's talk about one of those. Um, let's talk about youth sports. And recently, I would say in the last 12 months, as much as nearly anything else, we see a lot of deal flow with teams in real estate at this point because we've started to curate that in a meaningful way. But we've really started to see youth sports and youth sports development, so sports tourism tied around youth sports, become very salient, with huge billion-dollar type of projects where, I would say we think, and we're actively thinking today, okay, our typical OpCo, PropCo type of opportunity is team being the OpCo with the real estate, but there is programming in these sports complexes. Obviously, you're bringing people to a space, hosting tournaments, hosting them on site, et cetera. So I'm just curious, you don't have to go into specific detail, but from a salience perspective, how is youth sports landing with you? Is it drawing your attention? And maybe you can pair in kind of sports facilities generally in that bucket. Um, what are your thoughts there? And how are you processing that as we start to look at it?
again, another vein within sports, right, that we haven't even talked about yet. Youth sports, I've got three little ones. I get to see kind of, from the ages of 4 to 8 right now for my kids, what's exciting them, how that business operates for that age group. Again, you've probably got an interesting perspective. I'd love to get on your experience as a young man kind of growing up in youth sports and how that has maybe changed to what's happening today. But for our perspective, youth sports is not going anywhere. It's only getting more popular. The business of youth sports has evolved tremendously and continues to evolve. We recently made a partnership acquisition into Jacksonville, Sporting Jacks, with one of the largest youth academies in the Southeast with Florida Elite. Now we've got 12,000 kids that are wearing Sporting Jacks jerseys. Their parents are supporters and season ticket holders of Sporting Jacks, the professional women's team. And the facilities needed or desired by those families and those participants within youth sports has gone from where I played, like literally played at like the local playground park flag football when I was a kid, to now very professional. I mean, these are money makers. These are people are paying good money. They don't want to go play at the park where you've got to go to a porta potty down the road to go use the restroom. these are opportunities around the country that municipalities and cities and counties are seeing the opportunity with. I was just on the phone with one of our partners yesterday, and they were stepping out of a meeting with the local county commissioners. And it's a very prosperous, growing county here in Florida. And they are so interested in supporting to the extent possible youth facilities programs and real estate so that they can continue to attract the best families and demographics into their county. And they want to support it monetarily as much as possible because they see that as one, a gap in their market, but two, something that really draws families. It's the school system, it's the amenities and facilities that you have in your county and your city. And so the business of youth sports and the real estate associated with that is so fascinating. We've got a good relationship and a growing relationship with Jason Clement at Sports Facilities Company, which is one of the largest, if not the largest company doing this across the country in the US. And so I would put it back to you. I'd be curious your perspective on youth sports and how it's evolved since you were a young man, because I don't have the benefit of playing a whole lot of youth sports, but it has to be vastly different.
It is vastly different. I mean, obviously, in the seat that I sit in today, I think through a really, specific lens from an investment perspective. Obviously, there's a return element, that's a part of that. And, we're responsible to see the world through that lens. At the same time, I got to be candid. Like I've always got a little bit weary when I've thought about investment or participation or the monetization in a meaningful way of youth sports. My youth sports experience, and I played a lot. I was a little league baseball player, a travel baseball player. I played Pop Warner growing up, basketball, volleyball, track and field. And, I think one, today you see a lot more specialization with young kids. I think that what gave me an opportunity to be successful as an athlete was kind of that diversified approach to youth sports where simple things, hand-eye coordination, balance, being on a team, being on different types of teams with different types of people from different types of places. I mean, all of that was part of the tapestry of what made me who I was and as an athlete. And I'd never played quarterback till my freshman year of high school by chance, really. But it was kind of the youth sports experience prepared me for that. Fortunately, I could throw a football and I was big, but I think it was critical in my development. And at the same time, I loved the amateur, for the love of the game, for the love of the sport, the people at the little league complexes, some of the most influential people that were ever in my life, coaches, et cetera, they were there because they loved it. So I just think it's important as we go forward, both with how we participate in youth sports, but hopefully how, everybody out there is thinking like, okay, we've got to keep the main thing here. But yes, it is an unbelievable business opportunity. And I think if the framing is we are going to create incredible business opportunities, investment opportunities, and the byproduct of that is a better overall sports experience for parents and for their kids, then we're doing the right thing. But that has to be the thing. That has to be the goal. And I'm confident everything else will work out from that perspective.
Totally agree. Well said.
I appreciate that framing, Marley, of the OpCo PropCo. I'd like to take it kind of another step further. There's obviously participation from an investment perspective generally, but I think really what we have is a bifurcated approach into these investments. Why don't you lay out like how do we actually show up and where does our capital go?
Yeah. Again, I think we're trying to be a little bit different. So, for those of you that are deep in the investment world or not deep in the investment world, I guess let me educate for just a second. A lot of funds out there, let's take real estate funds. A predominant majority of those, if you're an investor in a real estate fund, you are considered an LP into that real estate. You are a limited partner. Basically, the derivative is there's a lot of people taking fees and waterfalls on top of you. And while you still hopefully earn a great return, your return is significantly less than what they consider the general partners. The general partners are typically the sponsors, the people rolling up their sleeves and doing the work, or the people putting in the first money, or they're just the people that constructed the financial vehicle and basically put themselves at the top. They do have usually more risk, sometimes, but ultimately end up with higher returns. So let's just take an example in a traditional vanilla real estate fund. If you're a typical LP investor, you might expect a 1.5 or 2x return. Usually on that same project or that same fund, the GPs are receiving a return of 4x or 5x. So multiples beyond what the LP is, same dollars, but different structure. For us, we are focused on giving our investors and partners, one, the best experience, two, hopefully the best projects, but three, a structure to where we are focused on getting into what we call the TopCo, or the general partner participation pieces of these teams and of these real estate projects. And so the dollars coming in, even though we will have a fund, it is a GP fund. And so all that means is, rather than you being, or the investor being and coming in at essentially the lowest level, and I mean that compassionately, you're coming in at the level where those people that were earning 4 or 5x are coming in it. And so we're really, there's not a whole lot of funds out there that are focused on GP stakes and GP elements, and especially those that are in the GP or the TopCo of the operating companies and the real estate. And it gives us the highest return opportunities, we believe. And so for a lot of people, we are surrounded by some incredible people, former athletes like yourself, professional and semi-professional. One of the things that's been really humbling and exciting to hear is, as we have conversations with people and talk about what we're doing, a lot of these folks haven't had the opportunity to invest in the GP side of these projects. And while they might have heard, the language and the nomenclature, they didn't really understand what all that meant, but they understood that somebody was earning a lot more than they were, and they were earning a good return, but it was fine. But we're seeing people's eyes widen and light up when they say, "Oh, I can be there." I've never had the chance to be on that side of the fence. And so again, we're trying to do things differently, and we're really excited to be coming into these investments at a point in which we can afford ourselves, our capital, and our partners' capital, hopefully the highest return possible for those projects and those opportunities.
Can you give me, so if I'm hearing you correctly, and to frame this out, so Momentous, we will have this $100 million GP fund. We're launching that, very soon. Our LPs, because we will have LPs obviously in that fund, are participating then in GP investments. Am I framing
That's
that the
correct.
right way?
That's absolutely
Okay.
right.
So as an LP, we've created a path for the enhanced return position, um, that would typically just not be accessible in particular. And we've seen this a lot with athletes who are typically, if they're making investments, it's either early stage venture or real estate. And if real estate, it's maybe you've placed, an investment into a multifamily complex through a sponsor, or directly if it's 4, 5, 6 units. Maybe you've done a duplex. Maybe you've, remodeled a single family home and flipped it. I think what's spoken to me the loudest, and what I've heard is what people are most excited about, is the fact that not only are you getting into this GP position, but this is a GP position in what is institutional type of real estate. Uh, you know, multi-billion in some cases real estate projects. And so I think that is what I've heard most from athletes, from other family offices, and even retail investors that are starting to say, like, hey, there's outlets to start to participate in this asset class of sports. um, and I think that's been very eye-opening for me and us, and exciting at the same time. I'll take any kind of general thoughts you have around that.
You're exactly right. I mean, we're in an economic environment where there's a lot of uncertainty. And I don't know that that's any different than any other point in history. But, people are earning a lot more in their savings account than they were 3 years ago when interest rates were zero. And so there's a desire and a yearning that if they're going to place capital, my capital included, somewhere. I want to earn the highest opportunity with the lowest perceived risk as possible. And so, for a long time, sponsors and these funds and different people, they just had a traditional structure where people came in as an LP, they earned their 15 or 12% IRR or 1.5x, and the GPs took, a big portion of it. And so for us, again, we want to be different. And so the ability to come into these projects is not afforded to us just because we're goofy guys and have fun and have decent personalities, but why we're able to do this with our partner. So when we go into a place like Jacksonville, why we are afforded the opportunity to come in, lock arms, and be at the highest potential point within the capital stack is because we're rolling up our sleeves. We're doing the work. We are partnering on these investments. We are not just passively allocating and earning our coupon and our investors' coupon. We are actively locking arms, adding as much value on the operations side, the real estate side, through our relationships, our in-house personnel, our skills, and our resources as possible, and adding value add to everything that we're doing. We are not going into these things passively and blindly. Every investment that we do is incredibly intentional and active, and we are there to add as much value as possible to see the most success as possible. And so as a result of that, we are able to have these GP positions and offer that to our capital and to our friends, partners, and investors' capital.
Very, very, very well said and framed again. Sound like a CEO. That's why you are. Um, who are we thinking about as partners? I just mentioned, I think, obviously if you look at our investors and our partners at the Momentous Sports kind of holding company level, you're talking about, we didn't plan this, but an interesting room of quarterbacks with myself, John, Tim, Blake, and others. And it was that intersection of sport and real estate that I think outside of our personal relationships with them that drove that interest and ultimately drove the capital. These are equally yoked partners, skin in the game with us, which is important for us, important for them. But is it family offices that we're looking to partner with going forward? Is it the retail investor? I know, the RIA network is out there. It's active. It's powerful. Um, Athletes, I can speak to that and what I've seen, but I'm just curious how you think about, okay, we've set up Momentous. We have our initial partners. We're going out to raise a fund and we're looking to partner with more. Who is that?
That's a great question. And I love that. I would say, look, at the end of the day, this sounds cliche, but we work with people that we want to do life and business with. I say that all the time. We're really intentional with that. And so you'll see that in our partners, you'll see that in our internal staff, you'll see that in the way that we do business. We're not saying, hey, here's us, here's what we want to do. Do you want to come along with the ride with us? We are always asking, how can we help you? How can we help your business? How can we help your family? So I think surrounding ourselves as we have with people like that, businesses like that, is first and paramount. Outside of that, in terms of the distribution and where people can have access to this product and this strategy along with us, we're building this and we have the good fortune of being surrounded by an incredible board, incredible folks like you and me and others that have a lot of relationships and expertise in how to structure, how to fund, and how to distribute product like this. And so to answer your question, we're in the family office circle. We have great relationships there. I think this is a perfect opportunity for family offices, patient capital that wants to investigate or be involved with sports and sports real estate in a very meaningful way to be able to come along with us. The RIA, Registered Investment Advisor Network, is something that I'm very familiar with my time at FS Investments, and has
What does that
been.
mean? What does that mean for those, like, I know that you just laid out the acronym, but like, who is in that network? Who is that?
So just think of it as a financial advisor. So, my parents had a financial advisor growing up. It either rolled up to a very, very large company that had a kind of back office structure and diligence and compliance, like an Ameriprise or an LPL. And so that financial advisor is considered on the independent broker dealer network that rolls up to a big company, big back office. And basically that back office approves all the products. They approve what you can be in, what your clients can be in. And there's a lot of support there. Or an RAA, as I just mentioned, think of a more entrepreneurial version of that, to where I wanted to be a financial advisor when I was in college early on, until I realized it's a lot of hand holding and patience and psychology that I wasn't equipped to handle. But an RAA is basically, you want to go out and have your own financial advising practice and have the flexibility to say, hey, those guys at Momentous have a really interesting theology and strategy. I want to make sure that my clients have the opportunity to be aware of that. rather than having to go through a back office and a bunch of compliance and a bunch of just obstacles and bureaucracy to get that done, you have the flexibility to choose your products. You have the flexibility to choose how you construct your portfolio. You have the flexibility to decide who your internal staff is and where your location is and how you do business. And so an RA is basically a very entrepreneurial version of that. And some of these RAs have grown very large. And it's not just a one man or one woman shop. It is a very large organization that still has a lot of that back office, but has a much more entrepreneurial concierge type of approach than maybe a traditional independent broker dealer.
That's very helpful, and I'm sure for our audience, laying that out is helpful and exciting. I think that this asset class, as I mentioned earlier, it's been a place where in the past, typically team owners have been legacy family owners that have generated their wealth elsewhere, and kept those assets in the family for as long as they possibly could in many cases. But over the, it's not super recent, but let's say over the last decade, you start to see that evolve. And then recently with the NFL changing the private equity rules and really the big four leagues going, okay, here's how we're going to think about private equity entering this ecosystem and the cap table. It's really started to explode from an asset class perspective. And I think what's exciting for me is, from an institutional perspective, you see a more sophisticated investor, a more sophisticated owner. Nothing against those families that gave us this opportunity today to be here. But I think, high tides rise all ships. And I think that's what you're seeing in sports generally. That's what you'll continue to see in sports as an asset class going forward. And I think we're really, really excited as we really just get started here, both with this podcast, with the launch of Momentous. We have some other exciting announcements coming down the road. We're really excited about where it's going and really living at this intersection of all things sports and telling the stories that are taking place within it. I think this is my last question of the day, and it's not specific, but I'm curious, like whether it's sports, whether it's your family, whether it's summer and working with your kids at home, like what's salient to you right now? Where are some challenges and what are you excited about?
I'm at a season of life where I'm just really trying to relish every day, whether it's good, bad, or the challenges or the opportunities or the things that I don't think that I would have been doing like right now. Like I never dreamt that we'd be doing this with the people that we're doing it with and in the way that we're doing it. You know, I would say that for me, I'm just extremely excited to be locking arms with folks like you and our partners and our investment partners that we have an incredible pipeline of folks that we're excited to invest behind and alongside, and to really start to make an impact. And again, when people say impact, a lot of people think, oh, well, that means negative ROI. That is not the case for us. Like we are here to multiply and amplify our capital and our partners' capital in the right way with the right projects. But also, we believe that we have an incredible opportunity to make a lot of great impact in the communities that we're involved with. And so I'm just so excited as a father with three kids. My kids love, they're excited to go to the upcoming Sporting Jacks kickoff with the women's team. I'm excited to take my 8-year-old daughter there and for her to see, the ladies on the pitch and playing soccer. But then I'm excited for that community aspect around the game and before the game and after the game and what we're doing there. And she knows daddy's like a builder and that we own some sports teams and different things, but it's making that real for somebody like her and her generation and her friends and understanding that, the good that we're doing. And so I'm just really humbled to be doing this with great people that's been intentional. And I'm excited for the opportunity in front of us. I think that, again, I'll keep saying it. I think that we're doing things differently. And I don't mean that in a negative way for the traditional asset managers and investment firms out there. I just feel like we have a very well-equipped, skilled, and differentiated team internally, externally, and with partners that we were thinking about this in a very different way. And I'm excited to be hopefully doing that with a lot more people here to come, whether through our fund, through our SPV, or just onlookers on what we're doing, or people experiencing what we're doing. There's going to be thousands, think about it. There's going to be so many thousands of people that are hopefully attending the games, going to the real estate, experiencing what we have done and the legacy of that and the ability for that to make memories. And some of my best memories are with my grandfather going to sporting events. If my life flashes before my eyes, it is sporting events with my grandfather, the before, the during, and the after of that. And hopefully being able to afford other people that opportunity. I'm just so excited about.
It's to that point, and to wrap up here. Uh, it's been a long time since my dad's engaged me on a regular basis like this. Not that we don't communicate, but there's time zone difference with Berlin and Orlando. But the excitement that he feels just around the work that we're doing, and him wanting to track and follow and stay up to speed and live vicariously, for me, it's just been special to kind of reconnect. For a long time, that was, hey, where are you at on the depth chart, or how did practice go today? Or how'd the game go this weekend? And then there was this big lull where that didn't exist anymore. And we didn't have that kind of commonality or that thing we could point to and talk about. And since, we've launched Momentous, and I've been working with you, it's been really cool to see him get so excited and re-engaged. And I have a 3-year-old daughter. I have a son on the way here in 4 or 5 weeks. I've yet to quite fully understand the youth sports ecosystem here in Europe. It is vastly different than what we've experienced or what we have in the US. But it means I really want to ensure that the children of the future have the best platform, and I think sports is an incredible vehicle to shape who they are. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm excited about doing. So,
Yeah.
Marley, thank you for being here. Thank you for building this together. Thank you for your leadership. I'll let you add any last words that you want to. Before I do that, for those of you following, listening for the first time, well, there's a reason for that. This is one of our first 2 episodes. This is going to be a 2-part series. We'd love for you to subscribe, tune in, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on all the social handles, Momentous Sports, MHP. Marley also has a podcast called Driving with Marley. Don't worry, he's not driving when he records it, but that's an MHP focused podcast. So make sure you tune into that as well. I know you'll have an incredible session coming up with Blake Goodman of Four Stones and Mr. Kathy. So tune into that. Marley, I'll leave it to you in
Yeah.
closing if there's
No,
anything you want to say.
super appreciative of you, Kyle. And look, at the end of the day, we want to do things differently the right way. I know I've harped on that. I would just say if you're a former athlete as well, a current athlete,
Yep.
and I know you can speak to this, Kyle,
Yeah, I will.
there's a shift in terms of the identity of maybe one day you're playing and then the next day that you're not. We've experienced that, and hopefully Blake doesn't mind that I share kind of his story. He's obviously, Blake Bortles was a great quarterback at UCF, a great quarterback for the Jaguars, and now he's raising a great family, but he didn't have a whole lot on the business side or the professional side rather that he was doing. And so this really spoke to him in a way that allowed him, our relationships, not just with him, but how we do business, to come in, to be a part of the fold, to learn, to activate those pieces of the brain, to learn business, to learn real estate, to be back involved in sport. And so I would just say, in terms of the community that we're building here internally and externally with partners, whether you're invested or not invested, I'm hopeful that MHP and Momentous is a place where it doesn't have to be athletes, but I'm speaking to the athletes right now. If you're a former, current, or past athlete, this is a place that hopefully you can lock arms with people like Kyle and Blake and others and do life and business, reactivate parts of the brain that maybe have been turned off for a little bit or that maybe are lacking that identity that they used to have. And we are more than happy to spend time with you and help you learn the business that we're in, help you understand some of the real estate that we're in, and to partner with you and hopefully give you a community of other athletes, former athletes to be involved with and to reactivate. Because I think that's another impact piece that's been really, really fulfilling for me, just a little bit that we've been doing it. And so I'm really hopeful that we can afford folks the opportunity to engage with us that way.
It's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up. It is something that's very important to us. Obviously, MHP is invested in the athlete experience through Nestry. Part of the seeds of why we founded Nestry was because of that transitional element. A lot of times, what we found was that athletes just didn't have the language to describe what it is they were experiencing and going through. I was this, and then one day later, I lost all those relationships. all that activity, all that stardom to some extent, not for everybody, but for many. And that can make the next couple weeks, months, and in some cases years, quite challenging to figure out where to shift that focus. We think through that lens every day. We know that that's a reality. I've lived that myself. And so for athletes that are looking to continue to participate in sports, you were on the pitch or on the field or on the ice or on the court at one point, but we kind of welcome you here to the owner's box. And we think that's an incredible transition, an educational transition, and a way to, someday wake up on a Saturday and go, I've got 8 assets globally in my portfolio, and I'm checking scores, and I feel, a part of something bigger than myself. And I've kind of got that dopamine activation again. And oh, by the way, I'm watching us develop the real estate around these assets on the way. And so, yes, we welcome, the athlete investor. We're really excited to, partner with who we have thus far. And that is definitely going to be a focus for us going forward. Well, Marley, it looks like that's about all the time that we have for today. This has been an incredible hour plus conversation. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to give us more context and background on yourself, on Magnolia Hill Partners, Momentous Sports, and our focus here, our thesis, why we're excited about the space, how we are showing up to the space, and our focus on that intersection of professional sports team ownership and stadium and mixed use real estate development. This was a fantastic episode to get us started, and we are looking forward to having these episodes out each and every week on Friday. So as I get us out, we'll link all of the social channels, all of our handles below in the comments. Would love for you to follow us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on X. We post content multiple times a week. You can sign up for our newsletter. Let us know in the comments if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter. But ultimately, we're continuously looking for opportunities to add value to you as our audience, bringing different personalities, perspectives, both athletes, entrepreneurs, team owners, deal makers within sports as an asset class to this podcast, to have an open, approachable, and hopefully educational and entertaining episode each and every week. So with that, thank you all for joining into episode number 1 and 2, which was a 2-part series with CEO Marley Hughes. And we look forward to seeing you next week when we talk with our very good friend and partner, Mr. Blake Bortles. With that, have an awesome day, and we'll see you soon.